Welcome to Hungry Authors, the show for aspiring authors who will stop at nothing to accomplish their writing and publishing dreams.
We're your hosts, Liz and Ariel, and we're honored that you're here. Let's dive in. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Hungry Authors podcast. Today, we have one of my favorite people in the industry and in the world, Lucinda Halpern. She's the founder of Lucinda Literary, a dear friend and client of mine. I had the honor of working on a book with her. Lucinda, welcome to the show, and please introduce yourself to everybody.
Well, cheers. I brought my cup of coffee because that's what we do in publishing. We drink a lot of coffee. And I'm just so psyched to be here with these two wonderful women. I don't know Ariel very well, but Liz is like a superpower mom. We are wired the same way, just get it all done. And anyway, a more professional background on myself. I started Lucinda Literary, which is a literary agency for big idea books, popular science, some memoir, sort of books that look to change the way we live, think, and act in the world. I started that about 13 years ago now. It's based in New York. We have several agents, and we've got a number of best-selling authors I've worked with through multiple books. And we've got a few other things that we do pretty unconventionally. So we have a speakers bureau for our authors who generally speaking is a big part of their careers. We've got a whole course and consultation division where first-time authors who are just looking for guidance can go and talk to agents directly, which is a pretty unusual opportunity. And we have monthly events. So we're doing a lot more besides representing writers, and it's been really, really rewarding.
When you are looking for potential new authors, tell us more about kind of the filters that are going through your brain. And let's talk about prescriptive nonfiction and memoir specifically. Tell us about kind of the differences there and what you're looking for.
Sure. So we think of this as big idea. That's what we're really looking for. And it's what publishers today are looking for too. But what is a big idea? Because everyone thinks they have an idea, and what makes it small or big. So for us, those are two different things. One is that it is both universal in its theme and its subject matter and has a unique point of view. The other is that it is both timely and timeless, meaning it's sort of capturing a current conversation or zeitgeist or a point of interest. But it also, again, in the way of universal, has themes that stand the test of time, which could be loss and affliction, coming of age, David and Goliath, sort of underdog stories. Anything that ultimately leads to a transformation is super important. I love how you said that. Like, what are the filters? Because agents really do review queries in very, very quick time. You only have so much of our time, and you have to hook us immediately. And so I'm looking for that combination, but what I'm really looking for is a unique takeaway. I can give you some common examples of things that we see a lot of that don't have that takeaway, which a lot of new writers find instructive. So one that your audience might come with would be a story of affliction and loss, a memoir about affliction and loss. And it's always devastating, right? It's always, and I always admire authors who are brave enough to put those stories down on paper because it's such a difficult exercise. The issue with that translating to a wide audience or a commercial book that a publisher would buy is that often they're not giving us another worldview. They're not talking about other characters. They're not touching on current circumstances. So it becomes like we're living in your head, and we're also deep in the heart of your pain, which is not something that today's reader is looking for because we want to escape this world of pain. We want to be transported somewhere we don't know. So, that would speak to the memoir example. And then in terms of prescriptive nonfiction, which you had asked about, again, that takeaway, it's like, what are we learning here that's new, that hasn't been said before, or is being said in a distinctive and new way? And that's kind of the that's what I guide you in. Of course, people like yourselves help writers refine that more. Agents help writers refine that more. But it's pretty clear when you pick up a pitch if it doesn't have a takeaway, if it doesn't have a big idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up pitching because one of the things I learned from you, and of course is a huge point in your book, is this idea of pitching, which is query writing, which is basically writing an email that's going to get an agent's attention. So much, in my experience, and I know Ariel would agree, so much focus is put on book proposals, right? And book proposals are important. You have to have a good one. But a lot of times you can't even get your proposal in the hands of anybody if you can't pitch it right in a quick way. Like since working with you, I've changed some of the advice I give people when they're working on the proposal, and I'll say, great, but have you pitched it to anybody yet? Have you refined this? Can you, there's some great quote that I'm going to completely butcher, but it's basically like this guy writes a long letter and he's like, if I'd had more time, I would have made it shorter, right? Because it's harder to say things in a brief way. Yep. And so anyway, the art of the pitch, the query letter, this part that seems often to be an afterthought after everyone's done the whole work of the proposal, they say, okay, now I'll just whip up this query letter. But in your book and in your agency, you put a high, well, I mean, you're receiving the query, but when you coach authors, you put a high amount of importance on this query that often seems to kind of be an afterthought for some people. So, I mean, if people want the in-depth, examples and explanation, they can go get the book, but give us a little bit of some instruction that you give people about how to pitch well.
Yeah. If I can preface, if you'll let me, with like two really surprising facts about pitches you would not know as a writer.
I love it. Go.
So one would be you write a short but captivating pitch and you don't have a lick of material developed. You've got an agent hooked into having a conversation. What is a query letter? It's a conversation opener. All you want to be is in conversation with that agent, and you've succeeded. So we've signed projects, as have many other agents, on the basis of a pitch. Alternatively, if you've written the full memoir, the full manuscript, and you, what's surprising about that is you will learn so much more in pitching it and you'll kick all of the tires, you'll figure out all of the weaknesses, you'll diagnose all of the challenges. And ideally, if you follow the advice and get signed, you'll also see all the strengths of your work in that pitch letter. So the pitch becomes so super important in those two ways that I think are other than an author might expect, because so many people come to our agency and they say, I've got a manuscript, will you read it? The pitch is not more than that. They're just describing the manuscript they want us to read, and that's very different than a query letter. So in terms of trying to capture, and of course, there's so much more in the book. I hope I'll be able to remember it. But there's some basic rules you've heard before. And one of them is personalize the letter. Don't slush 50 agents with the same letter, because we can tell right away that it's a template approach. Often we get query letters that aren't even in our subject of interest, proving that the writer's done no research whatsoever, and that's an automatic deal breaker. And it just signals desperation, right? It's like, I'm just trying everyone there is. We've even seen writers, please don't do this, people listening, copy lots of agents on one, sometimes open CC'd, and it's like, you just feel spammed. You don't want anyone to feel like this is spam. You don't even want them to feel like it's slush. The best pitch letters will feel like you're in an intimate and solicited conversation with someone, because ultimately we do want to receive queries from first-time writers, because you're the talent that creates our livelihood. So, so just remember that as you're going forth in this daunting process. So the personalization is key. The elevator pitch, what you're talking about, those two lines that if you have a minute in an elevator, you're going to tell me about what your book is. It's not going to be just about your book, as we talked about. This letter is not going to be just your synopsis. It's going to be more about what I call in the book the 5 W's. So the who, what, where, when, and why. And if you sort of adhere to that formula, you'll be able in your paragraph to tell us exactly what happens in the book, because 98% of the time, the slush queries I receive, I can't tell you what actually happens in the book. You can imagine that's a huge problem. Now, why is there so much importance put on the query letter? It's not just a matter of an agent or a publisher's time. It's ultimately a reader's time. We're all flipping through Amazon. We are finding 3 short paragraphs that get us to buy a book or not. And so if an author can't do that for the work that they know best, that's going to be a real problem for readers later on, and publishers will know that.
Something too that I want to touch on that is really interesting and that I liked about, of course, you in the book is that you are a smidge about breaking the rules sometimes, which a lot. Now, we don't want to give any blanket bad advice about if an agent wants you to contact someone in a particular way, you can follow those rules. But a great pitch, a great query letter covers a multitude of sins to some degree, right? Like, finding the exact email address of the agent, or basically, if you're pitching right, no agent is going to say, wow, this is amazing. I think it's going to be a bestseller, but you know what? You didn't use my contact form. So I'm just not going to, I just feel like so many authors get a little bit wound up in like the right way to do things or the right time to do things. What if I self-published, whatever, kind of all of these things that don't really matter compared to this, right? Compared to getting this part right. Just have a great idea, have a great pitch. That's really the most important part.
So absolutely right. I'm so happy you brought that up because it is like one of the most fun and juicy parts of the book.
Yeah.
And it's supported by, because I conducted like 20 interviews for this book with best-selling authors and, really well-renowned editors and agents. And they supported this, the idea that you capture them in whatever way possible. Peter Heller, who's the best-selling author of The Dog Stars and The River and Celine and a number of other books, he's like, to be honest, Lucinda, I never followed any of those rules. And he's just like the kind of contrarian author I love, The idea is that there are so many of these like complicated query portals and systems, and you don't know if anyone's ever receiving it on the other end, and it may not even break it through our spam filter. So if you follow the sort of formula of creating the perfect pitch that is outlined in Get Signed, find your way to hit all of those highlights in whatever format they're requiring. Better yet, subscribe to Publishers Marketplace and get a direct email for the agent that you are looking to contact. Even better still, find the one person that you know in publishing who's published a book and ask for some form of warm introduction, even if it's in a completely different genre. Like, find any way you can to break in through your network. And those are the sort of most important things I'd say. At Lucinda Literary, we've actually taken this advice, right? We hear from so many writers, stop making it so tough. And we've developed on our submissions page a super quick form that's just like, tell us who you are, give us the book in 3 to 5 sentences, attach some sample material if you'd like, and we'll be in touch with you if we're interested. And it's just made it really easy for people to submit without having to go through all those hoops.
Yeah, it's such a gift, really, because I'm sure authors spend just hours upon hours querying and trying to, meet every single agent's, really subtle specifications and stressing so much. And half of the coaching process is just like, it's going to be okay. Don't worry. Like, everyone here is, professionals. I promise you they've seen it all. It's really going to be okay. But I appreciate, on behalf of authors listening, the explicit, permission to just like make it easy, make it a little bit easier on yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And lean into your writerly self, like your writer, because this is a letter that should have the sensibility of your voice right? And that's something that Paul Whitlatch, who's another, he's an editor at Random House who interviewed for the book. He's like, that's what he's looking for, not some formal presentation, not I am Liz Morrow and I'm pitching you, or worse in the third person, which we get a lot of too. It's like, this is supposed to feel like a conversation with a friend or someone I know or want to know. So be the writer you are. Use a little humor. Why not? Make us laugh.
Yeah, definitely. So you have written this book, which is called Get Signed, and it's coming out any day now, which is amazing. But tell us a little bit more about like why this book right now, kind of in your career. What are your hopes for this book? Tell us a little bit more about the why for you behind all of this.
Sure. So Ariel is quizzing me as I would be quizzed in a publisher meeting, by the way, writers listening. Like, this is the first question you will be asked if you get in the room with a publisher when they're considering acquiring your book. Why this book now? So that's a fun story to tell. Pandemic, I guess when I started Lucinda Literary, I always was more interested in a business that could scale, that would touch and impact a lot of people versus just an exclusive few. And the publishing industry, as we know, has long been very exclusive. That's been wonderful in the sense of working with a select group of authors I love and nurturing their careers in a very hands-on way that we're really proud of at Lucinda Literary. But it's not so great for all of those writers who are just like so desperate for the guidance and can't break in. So pandemic hits and everyone's doing things online. And I said, I'm going to try some online courses and events and workshops. And I'm like in the dimly lit children's bedroom, trying to give these events, totally phobic of public speaking, and found that people really needed this advice and needed this information. So I started teaching, one student became 10 and 10 became 100. And now it's been hundreds of people who have been through our programs. Of course, one of them was called Get Signed. And not only that, many have gotten signed and they come back to give us their success stories about how they applied the formulas to actually get the agents and the book deals of their dreams. Once I knew I had that sort of what I call, Liz will know, like proof of concept, that this formula worked, it was, of course, a natural to try to bottle it up and put it in a book and share it with the world, which a book allows. So that's sort of the why now. Another fun fact is most clients that we take on in this area of nonfiction, practical nonfiction, they're about a decade into their careers, just hovering around that area when they are perfectly positioned for a book deal. It's a funny thing. Like, come to us 5 years in, you're probably too early. Come to us 10 years in, you're right where we want you. It's like you're still growing, but you've also accomplished, and have the recognition in your field. So that was the why for me. But, what a crazy meta experience of the agent becoming the author, right?
Yes.
And how much I've learned from that and how much it's transformed my author care.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. I can imagine. And Liz and I feel similarly, obviously, with the Hungry Authors book too. It is definitely a weird meta. We're like, man, I guess we should apply a lot of the things that we now.
And isn't that hard?
Yes.
Like,
Oh
funny story. And Liz was on the call. We're on with my editor at Hay House.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I just want to encourage you to show and not tell. And I'm like, I don't know if I laughed or cried. I was mortified that I would be getting the most basic advice that I give to every new writer every day, and yet so hard to do.
So
Like,
hard.
what does it even mean? Well, what it means is illustrate, not use exposition everywhere, not characterize everywhere. So yeah, it's wild, huh?
Totally. Yeah. Well, and tell us a little bit about getting your own experience getting signed. So of course you had your agency up and running. You were about 10 years into your agenting career. You've done this, you've done some online workshops. So you had proof of concept, but and of course you were in the industry, so you had contacts, but it wasn't like you had a huge platform. You didn't have, this like a lot of what people like say you have to have. And though you are an expert and you did what we counsel a lot of our authors to do, which is start with your expertise. That's usually a great place to start. If you want a career as an author, start there, and you did that. But you didn't have a big platform, and there are thousands of literary agents. So what was the process of getting signed like for you?
So you guys ask brilliant questions. These are some of the best I've gotten. So as you know, in Get Signed, one of the things we say is that there are 3 keys to getting a book deal. And it's great writing, an irresistible platform, or a big idea. You don't need to have all 3. This is like the critical news. People are focused on, I've got to be a good writer and I'm not good enough, or I've got